So today I'm going to present a work on how to protect NTP with the Chronos. Is a joint work with Omer Deutsch, Danny Dolev, and Michal Shapir. Should it work? Okay. NTP is a network time protocol, which is a synchronized time across computer systems over the internet. I guess you all know how major this protocol is. Many applications rely on it, such as TLS, DNS, HTTPS, Kerberos, and many financial applications. In a nutshell, NTP is a client-server architecture. Consists of two main steps: poll process and selection process. At the poll process, the NTP client gathers time for samples from different NTP servers. For instance, if we have, slightly working, okay. If we have 3 NTP servers and 1 client, so the client sends NTP queries and gets NTP response. On the selection process, the client chooses the best time samples and updates his clock accordingly. However, NTP is highly vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attack that conducting time shifting. Man-in-the-middle attack is an attacker who controls the section between the client and one of the or more of the NTP servers, and he can tamper the NTP response. So, for example, if the attacker is between the client and the left NTP server, he can change the NTP response and make the client believe this is the best one, or at least one of the best. Moreover, man-in-the-middle can also impact the local time by simply dropping or delay packets to or from servers. That is why encryption and authentication do not help. So, indeed, previous studies consider man-in-the-middle as too strong for NTP. Why is NTP so vulnerable to man-in-the-middle? As we said before, NTPs consist of 2 processes, poll process and the selection process. So in the poll process, the client relies on a very small set of NTP servers coming from certain pools. And these servers are often DNS cached, which means that the attacker can only need man-in-the-middle capabilities with respect to very few NTP servers in order to maintain his attack. Moreover, NTP selection process algorithms do not design to handle many incurrencies sources, and they assume that the NTP response are well distributed around the UTC, the correct time. So powerful and sophisticated man-in-the-middle can bypass the selection process algorithms, and therefore he is beyond the scope of traditional treat models. In order to face this limitation, we suggest a modified NTP client, which is called Chronos NTP client, with the following characteristics. First, it has provable security. We can bound the probability of success to time-shifting attacks, even for man-in-the-middle attacker. It is a backward compatibility, since there is no need to change anything in the server side, only in the client side, and the changes that we need to do is only limited software changes. And we add only low computational and communication overhead, since we query only few NTP servers. So in order to prove how we protect NTP, we should define our threat model. So we consider an attacker that have full control over a large function of NTP servers, say quarter. We assume that he is capable of both deciding the content of the NTP response and the timing when this response is going to arrive to the client. And of course, we assume that he is malicious and try to shift the client's time as much as possible. So how Chronos is built? First, it relies on many NTP servers. In order to do so, we generate a large server pool, hundreds of NTP servers per client, in order to raise the threshold needed by the attacker. On the other hand, we query only few servers that are randomly chosen in every update in order to avoid overloading NTP servers. And finally, we use smart filtering in order to remove outliers and make it hard to the man in the middle to contaminate the chosen time samples. So now we will show, given hundreds of servers, how Chronos client is update its clock. So out of hundreds of servers, we query M, around tens of the servers at random. We order them according to their value from low to high. And then we remove the D lowest and the D highest time samples. And we focus on the remaining set. Now, we check first if the remaining samples are close to each other. And secondly, if their average time is close to the local time, to the client's time. If both of these conditions are satisfied, then the average will be the new client's time. Otherwise, if we fail, otherwise, if we fail, we resample. We try again. And again, out of hundreds of servers, M are queried, D from each side are outliers and are distinguished, and then we focus on the remaining set, try to check whether they're close to each other, and if their average time is close to the local time. If this works, a condition works, so we update the client's time. Otherwise, we're resampling again and again until we fail k times, and then we move to the panic mode, where we sample all the servers, drop outliers, and take the average of the remaining set as our new time. So first we will see, I will present the security guarantees, and then I will move to the security analysis. So essentially in our paper, we show that even considering a very extreme parameters, shifting time at Chronos a client by at least 100 milliseconds from the UTC will take the attacker around 22 years in expectation. And this is when we consider a server pool of 500 servers, but 7 of whom are fully controlled by the attacker. We also assume that the 15 servers are queried per hour, and that the good samples are within 25 milliseconds from the UTC. We will denote this 25 milliseconds as omega. These parameters are derived from experience we conducted on Amazon servers, both in Europe and in the US. And here we can see the benefits of using Chronos over the current NTP as a function of the number of servers that queries per update and the ratio of malicious server in the pool where we have a pool of 500 servers. Notice that the y-axis, which is the improvement ratio between Chronos and the current NTP client, is in log scale, so the improvement is exponential. So for example, if we will take our previous scenario where we query 15 servers per update and where the attacker have full control over 7th of the 500 servers, we will see that Chronos can improve the current NTP by a factor of 1,000. And now we will show our security analysis. In order to do so, we consider all the scenario that can happen. Of course, take the worst case scenario for each of them and see how Chronos is handling them. As you remember, out of hundreds of servers, we randomly choose M and drop D from each side. So the scenarios are mainly depend on the number of malicious servers that we queried. So the first scenario is when we have more than D good samples. The good samples are yellow angels, and less than M minus D bad samples. red daemon, yeah. So if we have only malicious samples in the remaining set, then since we have more than d good samples, it means that we have at least one good sample in each side, and the good samples are within omega away from the UTC. So if they are bounding the remaining set, all the samples in the remaining set are going to be omega away from the UTC. And if we have at least one good sample that remains, so it's not necessarily that we can bound the remaining set. However, according to our first condition, all the samples in the remaining set should be close to each other. So since the good samples are omega away from the UTC, all the samples in the remaining set will be omega close to it, and then close to the UTC. And that is why we said that these attack strategies are ineffective. The second scenario is when we have when the number of good samples are less than or equal to d, and the number of bad samples are greater or equal to a minus d. So in the worst case scenario, we have only bad samples in the remaining set, and they're all lower or higher than the good samples. So the good samples do not bound them. However, according to our second condition, the average of the remaining set that we will later use in order to update the client's clock should be close to the client's clock. That means that even if we can, even if the attacker can shift away the client's clock, the shift that he can do is bounded. Otherwise, we discard and resample again. Moreover, the probability of this scenario is extremely low, since malicious servers should randomly be choosing in much higher rate than the rate in the population, in the pool. And of course, repeated shift is a probability is negligible, and that is why we say that significant time shift is not practical. So to conclude, NTP is very vulnerable to time-shifting attacks, especially made by man-in-the-middle attackers, since the algorithms are not designed to protect strategic man-in-the-middle attacks. And attacker and therefore attacker who control over even a few servers can shift the time clock. So we represented the Chronos NTP, which is a modified NTP client with provable security, even facing powerful and sophisticated man-in-the-middle. It has backward compatibility, since there is no need to change anything in the NTP servers, only in the client side, and very few software changes are needed. And we add only low computational and communication overhead. And these are questions for further research. Maybe we can achieve tighter bounds or weighting NTP servers according to their reputation. What can we benefit if we allow small changes in the server side? And of course, we would like to extend Chronos NTP to other times synchronization protocols such as PTP. That's it. Thank you.
Hi, I just had a quick question. So I'm involved in some of the NTP work in the IETF and the PTP work in IEEE. And I was curious if any of the work ongoing there on authentication of servers would help address this issue, or if you've looked at any of that work.
I looked at the authentication works. However, authentication cannot help in preventing a man-in-the-middle attack, since it can just drop packets from NTP servers. So
I guess let me phrase the question slightly differently. How do you see the work that you're doing working or contributing to that type of work?
Again?
How do you see the work that you're doing contributing to that type of work?
I can't hear you. Again?
How do you see the work that you're working on with addressing the man-in-the-middle attack? How do you see that working in concert with the evolution that's going on in those other two standards?
I think that Chronos can be implemented on top of the current NTP. So everything that is to every direction that the NTP is going to proceed, I think that we can implement it with Chronos. So if you are going to add more authentication to the current NTP, so Chronos won't be an issue in that, because it's only try to update the selection process.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd be curious if you have any interest in reviewing some of the work that's ongoing in those two standards committees. I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, it sounds very interesting. Thank you.
So one of the things that the results showed was that you win as long as the adversary can't compromise a third of the NTP servers, if I understood the work correctly.
Not okay. In our paper, we show that even in higher rate of malicious servers, Chronos still can provide higher security. So even for more than one third.
A follow-up question is, I was wondering if you had explored the possibility, like the practicality of different types of network adversaries actually compromising enough servers to defeat Chronos.
Yeah, I think that the ratio can reflect both attacking a certain version of NTP servers, or NTP servers in a certain region with a given probability. So this is